With this United States women's national team roster, we have to talk about potential injury concerns that we foresee happening, or just anything that may kind of raise some red flags to you when you look at the 18 players and then the alternates that would potentially replace them. So, when Sandra, you do look at this roster, are there any injury concerns of players that are potentially not at full strength right now or have dealt with them in the past, and just players that you want to wrap in bubble wrap before this tournament?
Oh my gosh, players I wanna wrap in bubble wrap all of them, honestly, at this
Right?
point, if I'm keeping
Yeah.
it real, every single one of them. I think we all had a little bit of a collective, like, holding of breath, around Sam Coffey, and
Mhm.
her ankle injury, and they're obviously monitoring that week to week and limiting minutes or keeping her out when necessary. But, I think we spoke about that in a way after she sustained that injury. I think we all were speaking about her in a way where, like, this player's a lock, and the fact that she has this injury now is troublesome. And maybe, just maybe, it's was a bit of a tweak and she's working through that, and there's enough that has been evaluated through club, through national team, to where they feel that she will be on target for opening day of the Olympics. Who's to say how they're going to even utilize her for those send off matches? But that's a player for sure for me that I think they want to be careful with moving forward. Obviously, Roosevelt as well. I think we've seen how this team can sometimes function with and without her, and I think maybe we would agree that it's better to have a healthy Rose Lavelle, right, than not at all. And I think this is another player as well who had really worked hard to work her way back to finally get those consistent minutes at Gotham, really kind of show and remind everyone, who she is and what she brings to the pitch. But I would say, as far as the midfield as well, I think maybe anyone in that middle third, I think I would want to wrap him in some bubble wrap.
Darian, what about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna say the whole team. Just get a giant 300-foot tube of bubble wrap
Yep.
and, let them go kick a ball around at pre-Olympics. Yeah, I'll say player who is injured often, Rose Lavelle, I think we've talked about even if she can only play 20 minutes, you keep her on the roster.
Yeah.
She's a game changer, whether she's coming off the bench or she's starting a match only for a half, even 10 minutes, I'll say, because nobody can stop her. That's just fact. Nobody can really stop her on the ball, her creative ability, and it's doesn't matter who she's playing with either. I think that's a really big factor on why you bring her in this roster and pray that she stays healthy and monitor her really well. Another one for me, Mallory Swanson. I think she is another player that's just unstoppable. She's proven with Chicago she can make something out of nothing. She's really led that team. Sorry, Sandra. But it's been a rough season for them. They are a completely different team when she's there and when she's not. And she's coming off of, that knee injury that took her out for a really long time. So those are two players for me that you want to keep a close eye on, be very, very careful going into the Olympics, maybe limit minutes, give them just enough to be confident in the matches, but I think you wanna hold them tight, make sure nothing happens. What about
Yeah.
you, Lisa? Who else?
I think Sam Coffey, honestly, the way that she went down with an injury just a few weeks ago and was in a boot on the sidelines, then missed a week with the Thorns, and then she only played 23 minutes this past week, which with Kansas City. I hope that she is much farther along than that. And it's more just like precautionary to not
Mhm.
play her as much. But Coffee is a key piece in the midfield for Emma Hayes and for this United States side and what they want to do moving forward. So to have Coffee on limited minutes, is not good.
No, that's a good shout.
You need her back at 90 heading to the Olympics, and that is not far away from now.
She's also a player that doesn't ever play at 80%, 85%. She's going 130% at all times, throwing life and limb into battles. So, no, that's a really good shout because I
Yep,
don't think she's a player that can hone it in
exactly.
that manner. Yeah.
Which you also don't want her to, right? That's how she plays, and
Yeah, it's
that's
her
what
style.
has led her to be, on this national team going to the Olympics. Also, Lynn Williams, although she's listed as an alternate, I still am nervous about her, ability to be healthy enough at this point to go to the Olympics, and I just wanna make sure that she is because, I mean, how crappy if you bring someone as an alternate and then they can't even, play or train because of limited minutes or anything limited at that point, because Williams
Mhm.
is still coming back from her knock that she felt with Gotham at the start of the season. Okay, so we've talked Alex Morgan not on this roster. We've talked some injury concerns. Were there any other snubs before we close out this segment, Sandra, that I'll throw to you first? Any other snubs that you thought was going to be on the roster and ultimately they're not there?
I had Lily Johannes at least as an alternate on this roster, and I'm a little bit like, okay, is that secure? Is that relationship building secure enough to say, here's a major international tournament, here's a player with dual national team options. There's enough here in terms of trust to say, just your time is coming. And I don't know, because I think if you look at Netherlands, they would again love to have a player of this caliber on their squad immediately. Really, they've had a few players retire already. I'm sure they want to get some young, some youth in there and kind of shake things up themselves. But she's been in a couple of camps already. At this point, we got to see her play a few, what was like 15 minutes in Minnesota. Getting to watch her come out on the pitch live and take
Sheesh.
like no time at all to make an impact on the pitch was incredible to witness in real time. A first debut, a first goal, the way she had her head up on a swivel at times, constantly looking to find the pass. I thought there was enough, but maybe it's not so much about not ever. Maybe it's about not right now. So I had her at least going as an alternate. To be frank, I also had Corbin Albert as an alternate in this one as well. I think her declining minutes were maybe symbolic of her potentially not making this roster. I think all things considered, in the lead up to this into this official Olympic roster, her social media activity that came to light, things that she posted about that were harmful to the LGBTQ plus community, that were harmful to former players as well. I thought that was something that could possibly be an issue in the locker room. I mean, if it gets to a point where you have a player like Alex Morgan and your team captain coming out and trying to make a statement on that, on their behalf, on her behalf, essentially, that's a pretty serious thing. And so, yeah, I think maybe there's also a little layer of surprise for me to see Albert on this one as well, when there are players in that middle third who I think at this point right now are in front of her. And depending on who you ask on the day of the week, there might be people who think Johannes is in front of her. So I'm a little bit surprised to sort of see how things kind of all shook out at the end there.
Well, as we are live right now, there is an Emma Hayes presser happening. So shout out to our producer, Mark, who's dropping some nuggets from Emma Hayes. She was asked about Corbin Albert, thanks to Meg Linehan, a great reporter. And Hayes said that Albert is on this roster because of merit. And there's no denying that there's been a lot of work in the background, and everyone knows the importance of being tolerant, and Corbin has to learn. So just some nuggets and quotes from Emma Hayes on specifically Corbin Albert being named to this roster. Darian, what about for you? Any other surprises and snubs?
Uh, Sandra, I want to comment on what you said because yes, I wasn't keen on including Albert in my 18, but I understand why. I think she's
Yeah,
had more experience, she's had more time with the team. I think she's proven defensively she's pretty solid in that
100%.
6th position
Yeah,
if they need. Yeah.
we can absolutely
Um,
go on and on about the soccer reasons, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I was shocked about Johannes. But the way I'm deducting it in my mind is that she's a young player, she's still deciding. And yes, she had a really great camp, great very few minutes she had with the national team where she came in and wowed all of us. I mean, she was an artist on the field and it was so
Yeah.
impressive and we want to see more of it. But is this the tournament that's best for her to come in and just adjust right away to the international level and with the US women's national team? Is this really going to set her up to succeed? I think the US has had a few players, Mouse Swanson being one of them, Alyssa Thompson, that they brought in a little too early, kind of thrust them into this spotlight into US soccer. And we've seen both of these players. Alyssa Thompson hasn't really been the same since. Now Swanson had a bit of time where she stepped away. She had a
Yeah.
knock, but she had to mentally step away from the game for a bit because it became, in my opinion, too much. I don't know if personally that's setting these young players up to succeed for the future if you do want them to be involved in the next
Of course.
iterations of whatever this team is.
Mhm.
And I hope Johannes picks the US. I really hope, because we saw her social media at the Netherlands game.
Oh, so good.
But Lily, if you're listening, we love you
We
here.
want you.
Please stay.
We want you.
Please stay with the US. We love you. You will do amazing things.
Oh,
Yes, you will have that position on lock.
oh
So,
my goodness.
Darian,
We'll
I want to
see.
ask
We'll
you
see.
what do you think in not bringing Johannes, not bringing Sam Staub? Those are the two players I want to talk about right now. Not even having them as alternates or training players leading up to the camp. And instead, you bring Hal Hirschfeld and Croy Bethune instead of a Lily Johannes, who was potentially in talks to make the main 18 over someone like a Hal Hirschfeld or even Croy Bethune. Where do you see that rationale coming from Emma Hayes?
I see it coming from her looking at really what the future is. Where can these players, I mean, a defender is needed. They have a lot of players that can slot into different positions. You mentioned Crystal Dunn can slot into that left back. Casey Kruger can play anywhere. Emily Sonic can play anywhere. And these are all players that, well, three of them are up for who's going to start, who's not. So I think that they have enough in the back line. As far as the midfielders being the alternates, I think it's a big testament to this is what I see as the future. You are going to come. I'm not going to put too much pressure on you, but you're going to learn. You're going to adapt to this environment. You're going to get up to the speed. You're going to see how competitive it is, my word. And she's going to be able to give feedback in real time at the training camp, even though they're just players to their train and do whatever and kind of slot into different positions that are just needed for them to emulate the teams they're playing against. They're still going to be learning a lot. I think it is a big testament to her trust in these players and how she sees them incorporating into the team post Olympics.
Yeah, I
100%.
just think it's interesting. I would have brought Lily Johannes as an alternate over someone like Hal Hirschfeld, in my
I
opinion.
mean, yeah,
But
but I
also
think
Hal
Lily's so young.
Hirschfeld's yeah, exactly. But she's plays professionally and she has. And
Yeah.
there's
I think it's also interesting to note that like the alternates that are in the mix were like in the mix as those training camp players. And
Mhm.
Lily Johannes wasn't necessarily like, she may have gone from like a training camp player, but she became like rostered on these
exactly.
camps. So maybe there was a little bit of, backwards thinking and being like, well, why would we name someone who has had time with the team in a game, as an alternate? Maybe they wanted to utilize some of those alternate spots for those reasons, like having young players kind of get that experience.